What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog. Another fun video for you guys. This one we're looking at Temur 1000-Year Storm. So I definitely love me some 1000-Year Storm. Had a bunch of fun with it back in previous standards. Of course, 6-mana enchantment. It's pretty hard to pull off. But if you can get it online, it works pretty amazingly well. We got some new tricks here in Song of Creation. I also kind of looked at the Jeskai one, the Whirlwind of Thought, but Song of Creation just works so much better because it ramps you, as you can play additional land on each of your turns, and each time you cast a spell you draw 2 cards. And of course the downside is each of your end steps you have to discard your hand. So obviously you've seen this probably in like maybe some Temur adventure builds. That's kind of where most people were expecting this to be have seen the most play. But we're not really about that. We're trying to do something a little bit different here. So we're running just the 2 of, because obviously 1000-Year Storm is a 6-mana enchantment. So you don't want to play this on 4 and then you're holding up a 1000-Year Storm that you can't play yet because you don't have your 6th land out. Then you have to discard at your end step. That doesn't really work. So we're just going to run 2 of and just make sure we get it set up first, and then we can play this down, and yeah, even if we draw lands, we can just put those into play and keep drawing a bunch of cards and keep triggering our 1000-Year Storm and getting those million triggers that we need, so we can kind of close out the game with a shock, which will be copied millions of times for lethal. So just in case you're not familiar with 1000-Year Storm, it's 4 blue and red for an enchantment that says whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell, copy it for each other instant or sorcery spell you've cast before it this turn, and you can choose new targets. So your first instant or sorcery, it just goes through as 1. Your second one, you get to copy it an additional time. Your third one, you get to copy it 2 additional times. So basically, every time you cast a spell on your same turn, you get to copy it for as many times as you've played a spell already. So definitely want to play lots of 1 and 2 mana spells. And that's where Song of Creation really comes into play, because even if you've kind of run low on your hand, this allows you to keep drawing multiple cards every time you cast a spell. And you can play the land, so you can kind of, if you draw a land, you can shock that in with one of your shock lands, or even just a basic, and then have more mana to kind of keep going and get to that critical mass where you can just play a single shock and just deal 20 damage to your opponent out of nowhere. We also got another new card here in Shark Typhoon. We're just running it here as a 1 of. 1000-Year Storm does work in multiples, so that's fine if you do have a couple of these out in play, but really 1 is all you need. And Shark Typhoon just kind of gives you a little bit of an alternate win condition. It's also 6 mana. However, if you need to, you can always cycle it for X1 and blue. You create a blue Shark creature token with flying. But it's also pretty crazy with 1000-Year Storm, because each time you cast a non-creature spell, you get an XX blue Shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. So everything in our deck is non-creature spells. Of course, most of them are in the 1 and 2 mana range. So 1/1 and 2/2 sharks aren't that impressive. But if you just put 10 of these out at once, 10 2/2s, that's a lot of power. And of course they have flying, so that's some pretty nice evasion. We also need to survive to get to there, so we're running 3 Storm's Wrath here in the main deck, and then 1 more in the sideboard. Since we're not running Rao or any Planeswalkers on our end, we're perfectly fine to just deal damage to both creatures and Planeswalkers. So of course in Temur colors, this is the best way to do that. Another issue with Song of Creation is self-mill. So we are just running just a basic 60-card deck, because that is the most efficient way to play Magic the Gathering. So 1, Clear the Mind, just gives us a little bit of protection from Song of Creation to mill ourselves out, because you can draw a lot of cards. And in playtesting, this has actually happened to me. I've actually lost a couple of times because I've milled out. And so I brought in 1, Clear the Mind, just to kind of help mitigate that a little bit. And of course, Song of Creation, being in Temur, gives you access to Growth Spiral, which also ramps you and draws you cards, which works perfectly well with 1000-Year Storm. We also got a couple copies of Thrill of Possibility. The nice thing about Thrill is when you discard a card, you draw 2 cards. If you're copying that with the 1000-Year Storm, you don't have to discard every single time. You just have to discard that initial time, and then you're just drawing 2 cards for each copy of that spell. And we also got a couple copies of Blitz of the Thunder-Raptor, since we're playing a million spells and filling up our graveyard. Blitz of the Thunder-Raptor is a 2-mana instant that deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. And just like with Lava Coil and things like that, Scorching Dragonfire, this also exiles it. So that's pretty sweet. And we just need to have a bunch of card draw here in Glimpse of Freedom, Anticipate, and of course 4 Shocks and 4 Unsummons. Shock is basically your win condition, as you just play a million spells with 1,000-Year Storm, and then once you get to enough spells, you can just shock, and then it'll copy enough times for a lethal. And we also got just a couple of Unsummons just to kind of tempo out your opponent. And it's also just kind of a cheap way to get your storm count going. You can bounce multiple creatures if you need to. And of course, Opt is kind of the first card you include in the 1,000-Year Storm deck, as just being able to scry and draw for 1 mana and get the storm count going is a beautiful thing to behold. And the other thing about Glimpse of Freedom is, since we are filling up our graveyard with a ton of spells, we can escape this to recast it and just keep drawing more cards, especially since we're going to be discarding with Song of Creation. So we'll have plenty of discard fodder, escape fodder for our Glimpse of Freedom to get additional card draw off of that. And so the mana base, trying to be as flexible as possible. So we got a couple islands, a mountain, a forest. Steam Vents as a 4 of, 2 of each of the temples, Temple of Epiphany, Abandoned, and Mystery. Then of course the other Shocklands and all 4 Breeding Pools, all 4 Stomping Grounds. And we got these sweet new tri-lands. The Ketria Triome is the Temur 3-colored land. So just a couple copies here. Since always enters tapped, don't really want to run too many, honestly. And then for our sideboard, definitely have to take some things into consideration. The 1,000-Year Storm is definitely easy to play around after game 1. Your opponent is going to have a lot of either counter magic or enchantment removal. So against like control decks, you can bring in Niv Mizzet and Chandra, as neither of them can be countered. Of course, Niv Mizzet dies to a lot of removal, but you'll hopefully at least get a couple of triggers off this for some card draw. And if they don't have an immediate answer, you can do some pretty insane things with Niv Mizzet in a spell-heavy deck. And of course, Chandra can't be countered. You can just +1 to get the emblem on. So even if they remove Chandra, they still have a clock on them with Chandra. And the 4th Storm's Wrath, as I alluded to, just for those super aggressive decks. 1 Mystical Dispute for those control decks, Flash, and things like that. We do need some enchantment and artifact interaction of our own, so we got a couple Return to Nature. Obviously, we don't need to be Ember Cleaved, so we can just hold up Return to Nature and destroy those nasty artifacts. And then, of course, having the flexibility to hit enchantments or exile Uros and things like that from our opponent's graveyard. And then for some more target removal, 1 more of the Blitz of the Thunder-Raptor. That's a sweet name, too. And also a couple of negates for those control matchups. 2 Aether Gust, so just kind of a must. Red and green, obviously, Temur, Simic, Sultai, and just super powerful, popular decks in the format right now. 1 of Mystic Repeal, just kind of something I wanted to try. Another way to kind of deal with the enchantment creatures and things like that. And then Stern Dismissal for creatures or enchantments, just kind of having that flexibility as well. And also just trying to have as many cheap spells in here to trigger our storm. You can potentially get multiple triggers off of that. So yeah, 1,000-Year Storm is a super fun deck. It is very click intensive, but once you get going, it's pretty sweet. So yeah, let's jump into some best of 3 and see how we do today. Alright, Temur 1,000-Year Storm and Arena Standard Ikoria, best of 3. Out of Magic for quite a while, and then I got back into it right before Amonkhet. So I remember that set pretty well. And then, of course, eventually we got the Guild of Ravnica and the 1,000-Year Storm, and that's when I started hearing about becoming familiar with Storm decks, and got a little obsessed for a while. I don't know, Numot the Nummy was pretty intent on trying to build some Storm decks. So we'd have 3 lands, some scry, some card draw. Shark Typhoon in the opening hand isn't ideal, but we can always cycle that away if we're digging for answers. But if we do churn along with finding our land drops in our 1,000-Year Storm, then we might just cycle this away. Let's lead with Temples. We have Opt open. I'm not going to say no to that. We'll see what our opponent's up to, though. In green, so Storm's Wrath could be good. This song is pretty sweet, but we don't want it this early. We'll just pass the turn. For lands and 1,000-Year Storm at this point. And of course you scry one away, and there's another one right there. Triome. Right, we'll just set up for Storm's Wrath next turn, I think. Probably just Glimpse here just to be efficient. Nice to save the Opt to kind of get your storm count going, but we're a ways away from that, so might just have to probably just have to cast it to keep digging. Hopefully, I play some more creatures here. We can just kind of clear the board, at least kind of slow them down. Against Dark, sorry, Sir Fair. It's a pretty sweet card. So just a mono green Stomping. Take it through. Definitely have to Storm's Wrath here. Get our untapped land down. Storm's Wrath. Left mana open for a hexproof, but doesn't do much in the face of a board clear. Ooh. Giant Growth save their Sir Fair. That's pretty tricky. Another Troll. Do need to deal with this board. We'll start with Shock and see if they have another response. No response. In that case, we'll open the Blitz and Glimpse. If they do tap out, then we will Blitz this Barkhide Troll. Might as well just Glimpse of Freedom here to keep digging. Draw some cards. Do need to get set up here pretty quickly. Unsummon. We do need some interaction here. We could Shark Typhoon. Shock down to 10. And then we're taking at least 3. That's pretty dangerous. I don't think it's worth it. They're holding up some tricks as we've seen, Giant Growth. So I think we just well, if we get them to tap out, we can deal with this troll, either Blitz or Unsummon. Harpooner, sure. We can force them to use the hexproof and then just Blitz in response. Just to get it off the board. We just play this down and hopefully we can start making some creatures next turn. The Harpooner was better to get rid of. We did get rid of the counter and the hexproof. Maybe just the extra power from Harpooner would have been better. So we can Growth Spiral and Glimpse of Freedom. That's pretty good too. Let's start with a Growth Spiral. 2/2. Oops. We'll just pass here. Obviously the Shark Typhoon and Storm's Wrath is a bit of a non-bow. Because it will trigger for 4, making a 4/4, but then the Storm's Wrath will just clear it up. So we'll block 1, let's see what they do here. Giant Growth, just to keep their creature alive. Sure. Draw another card. Storm's Wrath. We do have lots of tricks in hand. Seems to be what they're holding up. I just need some blockers here. Try to get all these last spells out of their hands so we can Storm's Wrath and be sure that they don't have ways around it. Life total is pretty low though. Don't have enough cards for another Glimpse yet. Or Renata, so now they tap out. Perfect. We're going to lose these tokens anyway, so let's just make another blocker option. Just need to prevent damage. We're tapped up, so we don't get any more. Ooh, a storm. Do we have enough for both? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we're 1 off. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Oh. We do get a 6/6. Well, I was hovering there, not really trying to cast it, but it went a little bit too far. It's alright. We do have a blocker, but if they have any ways to deal with it, then we are just dead. I have 1, 2, 3. So yeah, if they have another Harpooner, then that would fight and kill the shark. They have another combat trick. You can just cast it on whatever is okay. Let's fire off the Storm's Wrath. Let's see if we can clear their board. Perfect. Get in for 6. We hold for now. We do have Glimpse of Freedom. Okay, so they just have multiple Renatas. Down to their last card. Anticipate. Let's go ahead and start with Glimpse. Here we draw. This spot. Okay. Our opponent knows where this is going. Sweet. Sharknado putting in work there. So I think we aren't worried about decking ourselves as much as we are about dying. So just want to get those Storm's Wrath into full effect. Thrill is nice, but we do need to deal with their board. Aether Gust for the green creatures. There's mono green. And do we want these Stern Dismissals or Blitz? So we need all the shocks. Let's go and shave those off just for a little bit more interaction. Probably gonna be playing around Storm's Wrath a little bit more here in this game. So having those bounce effects is kind of our best bet. It's a little awkward, but Temple can scry us a land, and Opt can also find us another land. We're on the draw as well, so we'll keep. And there's a land. Off to a good start. Opt. I'll save that one for later. Just looking for more land so we can get the Storm's Wrath going. Alright, we're tapped out, so we'll go ahead and bounce that. Slow them down as much as we can. Land. So we do have double red already, so any lands are fine. We also have a growth spiral, so that's pretty sweet. Just pass the turn. Taking at least 3 here. We're not. Okay, that's pretty cool. So definitely need to hit our land drops. We're going to growth spiral and Opt so we can find that 4th land. There it is. Hold it up with what we have. Storm's Wrath is fine. Still have 4 cards in hand, but we took a lot of pressure off ourselves there. We're 1 land away from Shark Typhoon, but they probably have some enchantment removal. We're a Storm deck, but of course keep drawing our single copy of Shark Typhoon for some reason. I guess we'll shock it in. See if they have some enchantment removal here. Not cycling, just playing it out. 2 mana open, so we'll see. Nope. Okay, so far our enchantment is safe. Fair. Shimmer is also a pretty interesting consideration, but obviously with Shark Typhoon, playing at instant speed works really well. Anticipate is at instant speed, whereas Shimmer gives you a look at top 4. Anticipate is only the top 3. So plus X. Let's make a 2/2. We just jump block. I think we're probably interested in Song at this point, because we are running dry. Go ahead and Opt. Storm would also be fantastic. Unsummon. I think we keep that. Block here, block here. Pump spell. In that case, we'll bounce. So we're set up pretty well at this point. Fight one of our sharks. Flying sharks. They just trade, so we're still in a decent spot. Shock. We still have the rest of our shocks in the deck. Desperately need to find a storm. I think we actually hold up here. We can draw 4, but we're not really ready to storm off, although the Shark Typhoon would still make a bunch of things, which isn't terrible. See if we can shock that. Okay. Got it nice and big. We have blockers, so that's fine. So the Storm's Wrath or a 1,000-year storm. There it is. And of course, Storm will trigger our Shark Typhoon, make a 6/6. That's pretty sweet synergy. And we got the Song of Creation in hand, so we're in pretty good shape here. So you don't like seeing life gain when you're playing Storm. Petitioner is a pretty cool card. Nice bit of tech, especially with all the mono reds. So next turn we just Song of Creation, make a 4/4. And discard anyway, so let's just start doing stuff. Don't need more lands. We're pretty set up at this point. So draw. Land. Unsummon. Out. Our opponent's having a good time over there. Alright. So yeah, 1,000-Year Storm, pretty sweet deck. Obviously pretty intensive on the triggers. Fortunately, our opponent saved us the time of having to click through all the things. Song of Creation, super powerful once you're set up. And just a one-off copy of Shark Typhoon, Sharknado, of course, to put additional creatures, kind of an alternate win condition. And yeah, it's a pretty sweet deck. I definitely love me some 1,000-Year Storm. And that's my current take on it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll look forward to seeing the next one. All right.